60 Minutes Overtime.
When Lance Armstrong...
13 years ago, 60 Minutes aired its first story on Lance Armstrong, called Miracle Man. And miraculous it was. A cancer survivor wins the Tour de France, beats back critics, and gives hope to just about everybody.
1, 2, 3!
I knew that there were people just diagnosed, or survivors, or people being treated, that were going to see that and say, that guy's one of us.
I wonder if you think we helped create this great myth.
We did. We absolutely helped create the myth.
CBS News chairman Jeff Fager was the executive producer on that story.
We put him on our broadcast in front of millions and millions of people, called it Miracle Man, and we wanted to believe it. Who didn't? It was an unbelievably inspirational story. But we were duped.
Back then, almost everyone was duped by Armstrong's claim that he rode a clean race to the top. But 60 Minutes stayed on the story, and over the next 13 years, the team would produce 4 investigative reports that exposed Armstrong's rampant drug use.
In the end, as much as we were duped, we played a huge role in bringing this story to the public.
Their latest story is called The Fall of Lance Armstrong.
We have learned that U.S. anti-doping authorities have given Lance Armstrong a deadline of...
What's remarkable about our relationship with Lance Armstrong is that it's taken a 180-degree turn.
Senior producer Michael Radutsky worked behind the scenes for years to convince Armstrong to answer the growing allegations of doping.
They put Lance Armstrong on the phone with me 4 different times. The first conversation, he was charming and friendly and kind of intoxicating. I told him how much I admired the things that he'd accomplished, but there were questions that remained.
In their next conversation, Armstrong's tone changed.
That went from trying to romance me out of doing the story to dialing it up a notch and saying, that we better be careful what we say because he's never doped in his life.
Their last phone call was even more direct.
He just outright threatened us if we moved forward with the story and told me that that there was going to be hell to pay for me personally, and that he was going to go after us professionally and personally if we did a story that libeled him or slandered him.
What do you say to that?
When someone threatens you, generally you're onto something.
What 60 Minutes was onto was a grand doping and cover-up scheme with Armstrong at the center of it. Lance Armstrong never did agree to a second interview with 60 Minutes, but Michael Radutsky got the next best thing. Armstrong's former teammate, Tyler Hamilton, spoke openly of Armstrong's drug use in an interview with Scott Pelley.
It's been said in professional cycling that if Tyler Hamilton broke his silence, then the full story of the legendary U.S. Postal team would be known. Hamilton does that now, in public, for the first time. You saw Lance Armstrong inject EPO.
Yeah, like we all did.
Right after our broadcast was aired, nearly a week goes by, and we get this letter sent to Jeff Fager. It says, "In the cold light of morning, your story was either extraordinarily shoddy or a vicious hit-and-run job. In either case, a categorical on-air apology is required." They sent it to us in the middle of the night, knowing that we wouldn't be able to respond until the morning.
But by then, Armstrong's camp had already leaked the letter to newspapers across the country.
So by the time we woke up, the lead story was that Lance Armstrong is demanding an on-air apology from 60 Minutes.
Later that day, Jeff Fager responded, saying 60 Minutes stands by its story as truthful.
I said, we will never apologize to Lance Armstrong. We stand by our story. We're proud of the reporting.
It seems like a perfect example of controlling the narrative.
Right. They're very good at trying to control the narrative, and they did it here, and they caught us sleeping in the middle of the night.
60 Minutes followed up with another story. This time, Radutsky got the interview with the man who would ultimately bring Armstrong down.
You have to wonder whether he's finally met his match in Travis Tygart.
I don't think he ever imagined that Travis Tygart would have the will that he had to see this to the end.
Tygart runs a small watchdog agency charged with keeping sports clean. He investigated Armstrong for years and last October issued a 1,000-page report that concluded Armstrong had run the most sophisticated doping program ever seen in sports.
Armstrong's supporters vilified you. How did you keep moving forward on this?
Scott, we have an obligation to clean athletes in the future of sport. This was a fight for the soul of sport.
You look for people like Travis Tygart in the world because he sheds light all by himself on something that is a serious problem. I really think he's an American hero. He's the one who caused the fall of Lance Armstrong all by himself. He never gave in, he never backed down under relentless pressure. Relentless pressure. Even after the Justice Department stopped their investigation, Travis Tygart didn't give up.
And finally, in a talk show confession, Lance Armstrong admitted he'd been lying all along.
I view this situation as one big lie that I repeated a lot of times.
What I think was really troublesome is that, it was only the partial truth. And that's what this most recent 60 Minutes piece does, is expose him further based on what Travis Tygart knows and tells us in our interview. He's still not coming clean, which is why we're still on the story, because it's still a story of deception.
Some people think that the story is over now that he's confessed.
It's not over. I think he'd like to think it's over, but it's not.